Okay, I'm here with Phineas. Come here, Phineas. Well, you can't see Phineas because of the camera angle, but I promise I'm petting him. There's the tip of his nose right there. This is Phineas's roadmap to success. Phineas is a great dog. I don't see any aggression from him. I'd see a little bit of that pulling your cheek back, so I'm going to stop. I don't think he's an aggressive dog. I think that the times that the main issue the Guardians wanted me to work on was that he has nipped a couple of people when he's been leaned over. The video above will go over how you can actually help him become conditioned to that. Now, since it's happened very infrequently, it's harder to do, but I would practice it, especially this area between the couch and the table and any sort of confined areas. Like I would also practice it over there by your doorway, because that's most likely where it's going to accidentally happen when you're not paying attention to guest comes in. You're in that confined area. Remember, confined areas are going to be kind of problematic for him. Now, because he's a submissive urinator, submissive and excited urinators, what I usually recommend before people come over, we make sure we take them outside. The less volume they have, the less pressure, it's easier for them to hold that pressure back. So basically, we talked about reading body language towards the end, and I'm going to go over that first. So I want you to kind of get into a habit of reading Phineas's body language when he is nice and relaxed, or what I call neutral. So there's nobody around. I'm not excited. I'm not fearful. I'm not nervous. I'm just completely relaxed like he is right now. He's laying on his back, basically, for Laura to pet him. So when you know when he's relaxed and you read his ears, are his ears forward? Are they back? Are they kind of rounded off to the side? And so you'll find that once you know what the neutral is, then when you see him excited, what are his ears doing? Then at times where he's a little bit nervous or anxious, what are his ears doing? So once you kind of recognize that, I'd like you to kind of focus each week. So 1 week, boy, is he happy right now. 1 week, just focus on his eyes and his head position, and look for first neutral, then for happy, and then not necessarily aggressive, but not happy. He is very happy right now. That's okay. This is a video just for you guys, so it's not a big deal. The next thing I'm going to look for, well, really the first thing I usually look for is the dog's body weight. Is he leaning away or towards something, or got a leg sticking out over here? Those are that's my first indicator. Then I usually look at either the head, or sometimes I look at the tail, or I look at the breathing. So you pick any one of those you want, but kind of spend a week looking at, okay, I'm noticing his breathing when he's relaxed, when he's happy, and when he's uncomfortable. And so you start seeing those deviations, then you know to get him out of that. Now, anytime that he is going to show you any of those things, and I'm going to go over him here in a second, you want to call him away. Call him away, or teach him to go, give him the command to go to the dog bed. So one of the first ones that I usually see is the dog's kind of relaxed and goes like this. They kind of stop, they stare at one thing, or they lower their head and they get stiffed. Their mouth often goes from and they're still. Stillness is a big warning in the dog world. Licking the lips, the Guardians have identified that. Now, sometimes he just licks his lips because he's, about to do some public speaking. No, I'm just kidding. Sometimes we just lick our lips. But if a dog's licking its lips profusely, repetitively, and you're noticing that, that's probably an indication. They can also be yawning. They can be sniffing around. That's called a displacement behavior. Let me see. The pupils will dilate. Right before a dog is about to strike, sometimes, if you can see it fast enough, a green sheen will kind of appear over their eyes. Now, I don't think that's going to happen with you guys. And the good thing about a dog that bites to correct is they typically bite at the same level of intensity. The fact that he has not broken skin is a good thing. So that means that he has some bite inhibition, and he's doing that to say, I disagree. But if we can read the body language, and we see he got stiff, and he turned his head away, and his ears went this direction, and closed his mouth, and we call that person away, I don't have to lunge or growl or bark or air bite at that person, because my humans took care of that for me. So let me see. I'll also want to look for breathing heavy or holding their breath, stiffness. Cortisol is usually indication of, indicated by what we call efficiency of movement, snapping the head around. I like to see the dog have I call Fidelity of Movement, which is just kind of looking around and kind of taking it in, as opposed to just herky-jerky. If he stops taking a treat that he will like to take normally, that's a big indicator. If he doesn't want to sit or lay down, that's also a big indicator. And if he doesn't want to approach the person, that's also an indicator. So that's where I would do the treat tossing that we talked about. Now, if you take note of these things, anytime that he does get stiff or show these warning signs, I would put that in the journal that you guys are keeping, and just a little bit of note of what's going on. Writing it down will help commit it to memory, but also you have it journaled somewhere you can reference it later on. Now, I'd like you to get a nice notebook, put it on the table here. This has only happened 3 times in 3 years, so it's not it'd probably be a little really dusty before you use it again. That's fine. But when it does happen, I want you to write down what was happening in the environment at the time of and right before the bite or before the nip. was we were playing Scrabble and it was really competitive. There's a football game on it. We were yelling. We had a house full of people. He just got back from a run. Whatever it is, what we're looking for is data to try to identify commonalities and factors that might be contributing to it. Let me see. Just write the date, the time, and then what was going on in as much detail as you can. After a while, if you have multiples, you start looking for things that are similar and highlight them, or just make a list of the things that are consistently happening. Try to avoid having him engaging with humans that he doesn't know and he's not very comfortable with in confined spaces, because I think that's a contributing factor. And when you have guests come over, like I said, I would try to meet them outside, have them do the delayed entry that I talked about in the video above. And then once he's nice, relaxed, they come in, maybe they give him a treat. You pick up the leash, you take him outside and go for a little mini walk, halfway point of the walk. We hand the leash to our guest as long as we feel good. We have instincts for a reason. If your gut tells you something's wrong, listen to your gut. And then eventually, if everything's okay, we hand the leash to our friend. Our friend and I walk back with the dog, and every couple, maybe 5 steps or so, we stop and ask the dog to sit. The guest asks the dog to sit, or rather tells the dog to sit, then gives it a treat if it sits within 2 seconds. Then we keep on coming back. So by the time the dog comes back in, probably should have gotten like 5 to 7 or 10 treats from the person. Sit right outside the door, come inside, sit as soon as you come back in. Have you take the leash off, because that would be leaning over the dog, which we want to avoid doing. And then you come in and let the dog have its own space. Tell the guest not to try to call him over. Let the guest give him plenty of space. Now, because the dog likes to play catch, that would be a nice, wonderful thing for if the dog is wanting to engage with him. Go get some of his kibble. Maybe anticipate this and don't, feed him an early dinner or save some for breakfast, and the guest can play catch with the dog. Make sure that you are not doing these sort of things when the cat is around, because again, that might be a contributing factor. And if your dog gets stiff, I've got videos on the resource guarding. Remember, the idea is to approach with the cat or whatever the thing is the dog's guard at, and watch the dog without staring directly at it. And then as soon as the dog gets stiff or gives any of those indicators of the body language that's uncomfortable, we stop, take note of the distance, walk away, get some high value treats, come back, and then step 1 or 2 feet outside of that range. So when you roll that treat to the dog, it should be still going at whatever the thing is, feel very relaxed and comfortable, then approach it from a whole bunch of different angles. After you've repeated that 2 or 3 times from all the different angles, then you go 1 step closer and keep repeating. When your dog gets stiff, back up, have 1 more successful round at the appropriate distance, and write down at where your book is what the distance was, and then try to come back to it again later on. Resource guarding is usually an inconsistent behavior, so when it happens, try to take advantage of that opportunity, pause the TV, do it right then, and really, it's a numbers game. The closer you get, eventually you extinguish the behavior and the dog won't ever do it again. Well, less likely to do it again. All right, so we talked about exercise. We showed the guardians how to do doggy stairmaster. We also went over scent games, and you can Google scent games. I just Googled it actually for another write-up. Susan Garrett's got a nice page that's got about 5 or 6. There's a whole bunch of free articles. There's DVDs you can buy on it as well, but I would probably just look for some free articles and try it first. And we might have to build up his sniffing capabilities. He's much better than us humans, but he probably is not quite as refined as like a Dachshund or a Bloodhound or somebody that's got really big droopy ears. So that's a nice way for him to bring some energy. I would get a snuffle mat and start feeding him out of a snuffle mat. I would get a couple treat dispensing toys. And get the toys on Amazon or Chewy. I find they're the cheapest places to go. And for the toys, get them a variety. I like antlers, real bones, nyla bones of different shapes and flavors. I also like water buffalo horns. And you can stuff like peanut butter or all sorts of stuffing in the bones, making it a game or a puzzle. You can also get some treat dispensing toys or puzzles. Those are nice ways to stimulate the dog mentally as well as physically. And then on walks, like I said, don't have a circuit. Just walk whatever direction you want for half the time that you have, then cross the street when you get to the halfway point and come back and let him sniff as much as he wants, as long as it's safe to do so. Burns more energy on walking by sniffing than from the locomotion of walking. And the doggy stairmaster, that thing alone, I've had people during the wintertime, is a game changer, because you could do it when it's it's really too cold or too hot. And again, setting him up for success. So I want you to be proactive about exercising him, and I want you to kind of flesh out how many is the maximum number of fetches, what's his maximum number of up downs on the stairs, and then we're going to play around with different quantities of repetition till we find the Goldilocks amount. Before a guest comes over, he needs 7 fetches or 3 up downs on the stairs or whatever the case may be. He really liked the stairs. He started doing it on his own. And he might be able to get to the point where you just throw it down there, he runs and gets it and comes back up, and you only throw the treat to go down there. Now remember, when you're giving treats, the order, or the reinforcement I should say, it goes like this. So we're going to lure the dog into a sit or tell the dog to sit. When the butt hits the ground, then we would click if we're going to use a clicker, and then we would give them the treat. So if the dog doesn't know how to sit, maybe I hold the treat here and I lower the dog's head up. When the butt hits the ground, right before the butt hits the ground, I would say sit, then I would release the treat into his mouth. And so after the sit happens. So it's the command word, the action, and then the reward or reinforcer. NorCal, like for going to the dog bed like he just did. For the dog bed, while I'm thinking about that, get a dog bed. I found that Groupon's the cheapest place to get. The ones that I like are the Sealy Posturepedics, not actually Sealy, but I like to get the ones like a cushion. So, and a light color, white, light cream, or light gray. So when you put the treat on it, he can see it with an easy contrast. Let me see what else. Yes, you're doing very good over there, buddy. I'm impressed at how quickly you went to the couch or the dog bed. But this would be the ideal place to put the dog bed if you can swing it right here in front of the couch or in front of the fireplace, because this is a little bit more communal with the room. With the one over there is a little bit exclusory. I would also have another dog bed in your master bedroom, and I would do the same thing that I showed you how to do the dog bed here for that one and give it a different name. So if you do want to have guests come over and he feels uncomfortable, we want him practice so he just moves away on his own, and we let it. So make sure that door is open. Make sure that he always has the ability to move away if it becomes too much for him. And if you're going to have people for a long period of time, you might need to take him in the basement or somewhere else, give him a bully stick. One of you might have to stay there with him for 5 or 10 minutes until him kind of feels nice and relaxed. Then you can kind of leave the area. And if you are going to have a bunch of people come over, if you can, set it up for success. Have those people come away during the week, one at a time. Go for that little mini walk I described, play a game of catch in here, have the person throwing the treats on the dog bed and all that fun stuff. And then next time they come back in, it's like, oh, this is Tony. Tony is a great guy. He took me out for a walk. I got treats. I got to play catch. Yeah. All right. So we also talked about rules and structure. Like the dog likes to get on the human's bed, and the dog does not have the best personal space or boundaries. And I see why, because he jumped up on the to the guardian. The guardian went like this to say no, and then at the same time she was petting him. So that's like the epiphany of, it's the zenith of mixed signals. So make sure the dog is doing anything the dog is doing when you pet is what you're specifically rewarding. So the dog jumps, if you're petting the dog and jumps up on you or the couch, then the idea is to disengage and cross your arms and look away if you want to. Now, if he's still there, then you probably get up and go sit down on one of your stools at the bar like we talked about. Now, the other thing, probably the better thing that I would prefer is to keep conditioning him instead of even want to go on the couch at all, is go to the dog bed. So if you have a treat pouch like this or some sort of little container or vessel that you can keep on your couch, now careful, there's cats in the house. Cats are very crafty. So you might actually have a box with another box inside of it. But if let's say he just goes and lays down the dog bed, just say the command word if you don't have any treats handy. Because by the time you get up, go over there, get them and throw them, you miss that 2-second window. Remember, dogs learn through repetition, consistency, and good timing. You have about 2 seconds to reward the dog. So if he does it, just say NorCal, and that's plenty. But condition him, so throw the treat on the dog bed that's in your master bedroom, and then when he gets off it, throw it again, and then after you do it about 2 or 3 times, take a couple steps towards your door, keep on repeating. Eventually you're throwing it from outside the door, and eventually when he's outside farting around, having a good time, put a treat on the dog bed. He runs back in, kind of wait for him to settle down. He goes to the dog bed, and then just say, maybe we call the other one Sacramento. And he gets up and goes in there, and there's a treat there too. So we help him practicing moving away and going to that room in an easy capacity when there's no reason why I wouldn't want to. Then when there is a reason for me to want to, idea. I'll just go over here if I'm uncomfortable. So having rules is a really good way to help your dog start to see you act like a leader. Leaders are typically the ones who enforce rules in the dog world. And there's not an alpha. If you know you read it, there's no such thing as alpha dog or alpha wolf. Dogs can kind of share leadership. So giving him a couple things that he can do to help contribute to the pack, like going to the dog bed, that can be an activity. It negates your potential for a conflict in a confined area. It helps him practice moving away. He gets reinforcement. It's a positive thing, and he feels good and comfortable. So we really achieved a lot of positive things with really very, very little effort. So we also talked about, a couple of the rules. I wouldn't let him in the area around the table here when we're eating. And again, having him conditioned to go to the dog bed is a great way to do that. We actually practice something called a relaxation protocol, which is teaching dogs to go to the dog bed and stay there during different levels of activity and things that are going on. So if you're having difficulty with that, let us know. If you want, we might send one of our trainers out and kind of show you how to do it. It's a 15-day process. We just come out once, we give you the printout, and you practice it. But it's a real easy way to help the dog practice going there while you have all this wonderful, delicious stuff on the table, and I'm conditioned to stay over there. Let me see. We also talked about not being allowed in the kitchen when we're preparing food. And again, I didn't go over this, but the way I teach a dog to leave the room. So let's say you go in the kitchen. When you're cooking, there's a lot of temptation, great smells, and you're there, and he wants to be with you. So every once in a while, go grab a couple of treats or have some treats over there he doesn't realize. Walk in the kitchen, he follows you, turn around, show him you have a treat, roll it about 3 feet outside the kitchen, and when he runs out and gets it, say the word out. And then he comes back in, I would roll the other one because you have a two-way go on your kitchen, roll one that way. Do this back and forth for 3 or 5 times. And so eventually you just say out, and then he goes out of the kitchen, then you go give him the treat as the reward. So at first we throw the treat to motivate him to go to the dog better out of the kitchen. The dog's eyes are very attracted to movement, but eventually we pay him after the fact. And then we go in the kitchen, he just stays behind the line while we do our own thing, and he's practicing some self-restraint and self-control. Same way when he's eating, the cat should not be allowed to be near him, and when the cat's eating, he should not be allowed to be near the cat. We also went over the concept of premax. Premax means that a less desirable behavior earns me a more desirable behavior. So for him, we go to the door, we tell him to sit. If he sits, we open the door and let him out. So less desirable behavior, I sit, but it gets me the freedom to run around the yard. Premac is not done with a treat, it's done with a behavior as the reward or reinforcement. So let's say I go to the door and I say sit. Now this is not a premac, this is my own little spin. So I say sit. If he doesn't sit within 2 seconds, I sit down at your table, wait for 1 minute, ask your Google to give you a 1 minute timer. After 1 minute, go back to the door and command him again, sit. If he sits, then open the door. If he doesn't sit within 2 seconds, walk away. Don't repeat your command word. The more you repeat it, the less you mean it, and you're helping your dog practice ignoring your commands. So at first I walk away from 1 minute, then I walk away for 2 minutes, then for 4 minutes, then 8 minutes. I keep doubling the length of time. But as soon as he sits, that door flies open. And then eventually do it for coming and going. You can do it for your front door, all over the place. There you go. So he just jumped up on one of the guardians. Now, I prefer, and I know it's hard because I'm not currently wearing leggings, but leggings I don't think are very thick, and it's hard for dogs with claws if he's clawing at you, but it's best if you can is just to freeze when the dog jumps up on you and become boring. If you move back a step, even though it's not doing a lot, it does cause you to move. And if you make a big deal out of it, some dogs like to tease. And so the best thing to do, and we're getting to the weather where you'll be wearing more jean sort of stuff, just freeze and disengage. When he gets down, don't pet him for getting down. When he gets down, then tell him to sit or lay down, do something like that, and then reward him for that behavior. And if he does it a second time, I would probably interpret that he has too much energy right now. Let's go to the stairs and do 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes of the stairs, or fetch or whatever it is, and deplete that energy. Because that's really an engagement. I want to play with you, I want you to pet me, but if every time I jump up and you get boring, well then every time I sit, you pet me, well, I'm just going to start doing the sit thing to ask for attention. We'll talk about that in a second. All right, so you can do a premac for preparing food, putting the food bowl down, putting him on a leash, letting him in the car, out of the car. When you're playing fetch, he might have to drop the ball. He might have to come and sit, before, drop the ball first, and then when you're playing fetch, and he just comes and spits the ball, now you have to sit before I pick the ball up and throw it. So we're asking him to do a little bit of something for us to get what he wants, and that helps shift that leader-follower dynamic. We also talked about petting with a purpose and passive training. Petting with a purpose is petting your dog for a reason. If the dog nudges you or pokes at you or paws at you or jumps up in your lap, he's telling you what to do. If you do it, then you're saying, yes, you're in charge of me, which tells him, I don't have to listen to you. So instead, when he jumps up on you, freeze, and then when he jumps down, tell him to sit, and then pet him and say sit and then pet him. Now, if he comes up and nudges you, instead of petting him and validating what he wants, tell him to sit, as he just sits down and catches. So he nudges me, nothing happens other than I tell him to sit. If he sits, I pet him under his chin if all things are equal. You can pet him anywhere you want, just avoid petting on top of the head. But the shoulder and the chest and under the neck are ideal places, especially for guests to pet him, as long as he feels comfortable. If he moves away or turns away, don't tell him to stop trying to pet him. So he tells me what to do, nothing happens other than I tell him what to do, and if he does it, then I pet him. So after a while, he'll recognize I can't tell the humans what to do anymore. I have to ask, and better than ask, I have to pay them for the privilege of their attention. And I pay through a currency of obedience. After a while, he'll come start sitting in front of you to prepay for the attention. And when he does, make sure you do pet him for that, otherwise he's going to go back to nudging you. Now, remember to use the watchword of paycheck if someone's petting without a purpose. You say paycheck is not gut busted. It's just, I think you might have forgotten that person to stop. Even if they did it right, tell the dog to sit. If he sits, pet him under his chin, and then you can tell the person, actually, I asked him to sit and you missed it. So it's a nice way for you guys to stay on the same page. While I'm talking about watchwords, I'd like everybody in the house to sit down tonight and write down a list of all of the commands that the dog knows. And write down the command word, because you probably say a different command word than you do for certain activities. And so if we know and we consolidate that, that makes it a lot easier for the dog. Everybody says come versus one person saying come here, over here, whistle, and so on. Also, I say the word repeat or rerun if we're repeating a command word. I say vocabulary if we're using the wrong word. And I say Scrabble if we're using too many words. Oh, what a good boy, you sat down. Scrabble, sit. So it just makes it easier for the dog to understand. I also say celebrate for passive training, which I'm going to talk about right now. Passive training, remember, is waiting for the dog to organically offer you behaviors that want. Every time he's coming towards you, when he's a foot away from you, say the word come and then pet him. Every time he's about to sit, or let's say I'm over here and I see he's about to sit next to Laura, I say celebrate. And Laura immediately turns to him and he says sit before he sits or at the same time he sits. It's better to say it before, but if you can't, you say it at the same time. But you want to work on it so you are getting better. You're saying it, you're anticipating the action and saying it as a precedent. And that makes, so if I sit, I'm going to get petted. If I lay down, I'm going to get petted. Don't do it for shake. And so basically, every time I would do it for sit, lay down, come. I would do it maybe every time he comes in the house, have a word that comes in the house. You could say a word to go outside if you want. You could do it for eating your food, drinking water, name all of your individual toys. You can put the leash on him, or every time you put the harness on him, put the harness on him and say dress up or uniform. And so that's a fun thing for him to do. And he likes the harness. Do you have any problem going into the harness?
He was just excited.
Okay, so pull out your harness, and he's all excited, then just kind of put the harness down. See ya. So put the harness down, and then just watch more TV. And when he settles down, pick the harness back up, and then he gets excited, put it back down. You want to get to the point where you pick up the harness, and he's like, whatever. And people think we're a buzzkill, but excited is not the same thing as happy when it comes to dogs. They can be excited and happy, but excited is typically when we're going to make mistakes. So we want him to actually be in a calm frame of mind when we're leashing him up, when guests or people are at the door, or things along those lines. Okay, so let me see what else I think that's just about it. The video, we went over the resource guarding. I have a video for that. So if you forget how to do that, message me. Remember, if you do have some issues with a cat and you want to work with a cat, Laura is phenomenal with all animals, and she has cats and works with cats quite a bit. So we're more than happy to send Laura out here if you want to teach the cat to be on a leash or not to be, a cat. Just kidding. But let us know if that's the case. And then if you have any questions on this stuff that we went over or anything else, please message me. If I don't hear from you, I assume that means everything's going well. So if you do have a problem, please text me because I can't help you. And the sooner you text me, the faster I can typically get a response. It's very normal to hit plateaus or things to stop working. So if you're unsure about any of that stuff, just text me. The number I called you from before is my personal cell phone number. Program that number in your phone, put down doggone problems so you can always just search for phone or dog and always be at your fingertips. Phineas. Whoops, let's do it this way. Phineas, come. So remember, say the command word right before the action, then give the treat or the reward or the pet. Well, that was Phineas. I'm David, and this is Phineas's Roadmap to Success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog, only sometimes you mean it.